You know, when you're out there and you're frustrated, stuck, overwhelmed, and lacking information, you got to get that information. That's the what. And your audience needs what's, but they also need to know how to think. And that's where training the coaches, training the mentors, and engaging with causing the whole culture of this to become a resource-focused culture rather than a solution-focused culture. It actually changes your odds of success, because success comes more predictably when you're resourceful. Because if the world changes, you can adapt. And we know that the world is changing incredibly quickly. And that's something that has to happen on a far more predictable basis.
Well, Blair Dunkley, you and your wife Melissa are here at No Excuses 9. You just got off stage. It is a pleasure to finally sit down with you. This is the first opportunity we've had to sit down and record, and I know you guys have provided a ton of mentorship for Elite Marketing Pro over the years, and been absolutely impactful and instrumental with all the guys, myself included. Very much enjoyed the workshop that I attended that you guys led. And you have a very long and varied career in many different industries, and I would love to start with your story and just all of the things that essentially you combined to get to where you are today. I think folks would really appreciate that.
Super, sure. Well, if you're going to start with my story, like you said, my story starts when I was 8 years old. And it was sort of weird. I shared it a bit on stage today, but you know, my story was my mom went upstairs. I was in the car waiting for my mom to return. She said it would only take a couple of minutes, just stay there. And she went upstairs to ask for $100 back in the 1960s for a spring tea, a strawberry tea, for a back ward of Alberta Hospital, which was a mental health hospital that had a ward of 200 patients. So there were beds up one side with lockers in between and beds down the other side. The ward doesn't exist anymore. I mean, they've really upgraded, but that was where it was at that time. And she was the very, very first volunteer ever who had been on that ward. They hadn't let anybody else in. And she wanted to give them an experience of a spring tea, a spring strawberry tea. 50 cents a person. And it hit me. My mom comes down, gets into the car, and she's crying. She had been rejected from the Canadian Mental Health Association for that $100. And that was a pivot point in my life. I knew that money cannot stop people from doing good in the world. So my life has more or less run backwards. So I was volunteering at 9, 10, 11, well, most of my early life, I was volunteering with Canadian Mental Health, helping out wherever I could, doing summer camps. At the age of 16, I was the youngest male, actually 15. I couldn't drive. I could drive, but I needed somebody with a license to drive, to be in the car. So I had my learners. And I was the director, and I was managing people around me. And at that summer camp, we had 3 attempted suicides, and these were supposed to be for people who were outpatients. They weren't supposed to be critical in any way. But we had 3 attempts, nobody died, and we had 1 grand mal seizure. And I can remember taking charge of the situation because at the ripe old age of 15 years old, I already had 9 years of experience in that area managing situations. And I was telling people the next youngest person there was 23 to 43 in that age range, and telling the 23-year-old what to do and everything else. And anyway, at the end of the day, it all wound up working out well, and I continued on, and that was the first time I was a camp director at the ripe old age of 15. So that was the start of this journey, and it started me thinking about how, first of all, how help is delivered, not just in the mental health area, but everybody has a form of behaviors that they do that can change their life. And at 21, I became a partner with my mom. We started a thing called Life Skills Colleges. It grew to 23 branches, 5 provinces, and 2 territories. And in 1997, I was asked by the government, actually it's called CRA now, back in the day it was Revenue Canada. They wrote me and said, your staff is saying that there are these things called life coaches, life skills coaches, and are you running an athletic thing? And no, we're not. And so they said, we don't have a definition for non-athletic coaches. Can you please define this for us? We got to create an industry, or we got to see where you fit in and find your industrial designation. So I wrote back to them and wrote out a couple pages of description, and they wrote back to me saying, there is nothing like this. You have just defined an industry. You have written an industrial designation, which was pretty cool, but I didn't realize how cool at the time until quite a few years later when I was told, do you know what that is? Well, I was written back, and it was a thing called a social invention, they called it in the letter. This is a social invention, and you are credited with this. Well, it was like what people do. It's like we didn't do the research, we used the research, we commercialized it, but that's what starts it, and that's what causes an industry to be born. It's the people who actually use this stuff and cause it to grow. But you got to transform people's lives in the process and change them. And I went about doing additional research and figuring out how to apply these skill sets and behaviors. And a few things happened that were not fun. By the time I was 28, my dad had gone in for open heart surgery, and I developed quite a few of these things that I started calling mind models. And these life skills and mind models I had, but my dad was in the hospital, and he was 15 minutes from being able to be released back to the main ward out of intensive care, and he stopped breathing. And the doctors put him into a coma, which he never came out of. And 2 weeks into that, I was pretty much devastated. I was crying in the shower, and I knew I could either fall apart or apply my mind models and get myself out of this mess. And I remember being so angry that I had the skill sets to be able to move myself out of that stuck, hopeless scenario into a way of moving forward again with my life and keep the business going and keep the college alive and keep that happening and give my mother the chance, because she was my partner, and my mother and father were married, and I figured she deserved the right to grieve and to recover, and I had to pull up my socks and deal with this, so I did. And we kept it going. The college existed for 35 years, long after he'd passed. So it was an amazing time, and it was proof that mind models worked. And I was still not fully engaged until the last story I'll tell here is I had a student. She was referred to us, again, mental health student, and she was referred to us, and she and her brother had a suicide pact, and she was unsuccessful. He was successful and died. And she was referred to us because she didn't really fit in any of the other programs. She'd already been tried in a lot of the other programs and nothing seemed to work. So we taught her life skills, and I worked with her with some of the mind models and started getting her into what we called at the time basic job readiness training program. And in the 4 months of working with her and working with her on the mind models, she graduated, and within 6 months, she had a job. She was able to move out of home. She had a job with a cosmetic company in a department store, being a counter person, but started to be recognized as she was really knowledgeable, really quick, and incredibly beautiful. Like she was like a model in there, and she got promoted. She got promoted to store manager, then a small group of stores in the area, and then the regional manager resigned, quit, or moved out of the area because her husband got transferred, and so she went with him. And Diane had this wonderful opportunity to become regional manager in 8 or 9 months. And I taught her all of these skill sets, especially the mind models of success and being able to be different. And she was starting to, go from a girl that was potentially suicidal to a wonderful young lady who was dating an Edmonton Eskimo football player, which is like the CFL, like your NFL, but our CFL, dating that, to now getting hired to go traveling. She got a car, she got 2 apartments, one in Edmonton and one in Calgary, driving back and forth on a 200-mile stretch of highway with her whole region being that region, going back and making more money than I was at the time. And I got pissed, totally pissed. She's making more money. She just about died. I taught her all these things. She couldn't get out of her own home with her parents, and in under a year, her life is frickin' transformed. And what am I doing? Oh, it just drove me nuts. So anyway, a few years later, at the birth of our first child, I had always planned to take the year off, and I did. And I started putting together an action plan in the first 6 months before our child came along, and I planned out everything. I was driving my wife nuts by being at home, but at the end of the day, I went and built this action plan. Catherine came along, thank God I was there. It was a difficult birth, but it all worked out great. And a few months into that next area, when I finally fleshed out the rest of the action plan, practiced the behaviors that I knew I needed to practice, and went back to work at my business, and had removed myself functionally from the college during that year off and transferred everything over so it could do its own thing. And I wound up going out there, and at the college I was making very good money, about 60 grand a year, like netting about 42,000 a year. And that was good money back in the day. Like, that's a long time ago. So it was pretty good money. And I left. And in the following year, after I went back to work in my own business, I made $147,000. I went from 42 to 147 in 1 year, applying what I knew, doing what I needed to do, and did it in bricks and mortar. I then realized I did that, but I'd only worked 17 weeks during the entire year. So that was leverage. I had time freedom. I had money freedom. I had everything that I wanted at that point, except I wanted to do more. So the following year, I went and screwed it all up because I worked more. Yeah, I made more money, but at the end of the day, I didn't want to work that much more, and screwed up. So that when the birth of my second daughter came along, I wound up being in such demand that I was there when she was born, but in February, I was only home for 45 days between February 1st and December 1st. And that's not a lot of time. So I missed that part, and I said, I'm never doing that again. I had to apply my skills to myself again and re-engineer my life. And that brought me to sort of where I am now. And my wife, my partner, Melissa, and I built our business and transformed our business and decided to take these mind models out and teach them to others because they worked. They worked on me, they worked on Diane, they worked on hundreds and hundreds of other people where they work about 80% of the time. And I was pretty much fed up with everything I saw in the personal development field because they were, and still are, talking a lot about mindset. Mm-hmm. And mindset is good if you have nothing. Okay, I'm not going to knock it completely, but it's like 50 plus years old and it's not really changed much. And things like, just think positive, be positive. And you can do that, but if something hits you, it's very, very difficult to get out of that if you don't have something that you can do that's identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. And mindset is not that identifiable when it's very elusive. It's like trying to hold, sand in your hand and it just slides out between your fingers. It's not easy. It's great when you have it. It's difficult to get back. But with the college and with the research that I did, everything that we delivered, we had to meet minimum standards so that people didn't die. And the standard was, it's got to be identifiable, it's got to be repeatable, and it's got to be duplicatable. And identifiable means I have to be able to identify it like this, glass of water, okay? And it has to be, if I put it down, I can pick it up again. I can put it down, I can pick it up again. It's repeatable, okay? It has to be that repeatability. And if I pour water from my glass to yours, won't do it, but normally I would do it. It's duplicatable. We can have you do the same thing. So is that a glass of water to you?
That's definitely a glass of water.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I can identify it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Identify it and repeat it. And we can duplicate the result. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
There we go. It's not a mind model, but it fits the criteria. And that's really what I've spent the last part of my life doing here, is getting those things, over 100 mind models that fit that. And what I just did on stage there is I taught people the success formula mind model. And they got it. And they realized and they saw how stuck they are frequently with mindset training. Mm-hmm. Good stuff, better than nothing, but if they get stuck, getting unstuck is not easy. And that's one of the things I hope people get from this. So.
That was one of the key distinctions that I wanted to cover is, the difference between mindset and a mind model. Well, mind models, right? As you mentioned, there are
over 100.
There are over 100, and I think I maybe know of a handful,
yep.
Based on our time together. And you mentioned, repeatable, what was it?
Identifiable.
Identifiable, repeatable, duplicatable?
Right.
There we go. So
duplicatable means being able to transfer to others.
Yeah. So I think it would be great to give an example of a mind model, and I know this is something you could teach on for days, if not weeks, if not months, if not years.
Years. It is years.
But yeah, I think a concrete example. You shared one from stage. Mm-hmm. You actually told a great story of how one was implemented to save someone's life, which I'm sure is not a unique circumstance by any stretch. But
Kurt's coming on to speak later.
Yeah, we will be talking later today.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be awesome for the audience.
Yeah, super. So we have a bunch of them. I think maybe the IBR is the easiest one for people to grasp, and it's one of the more standalone ones. You don't need to know other mind models to make that one work. So IBR, intention. You got to set an intention for your life to change. If you don't really set an intention, it doesn't really get there, okay? You don't know where to go. And some people have a really, really, really difficult time setting an intention. I don't know how to set an intention. I've never set an intention. How do I do this? Well, I go, what result do you want? Oh, result. That's cool. That's something great. Or some people go goal. I have goals versus the mind model of goal versus results. And goals are like playing horseshoe and hand grenades. Results are like playing darts. If you don't hit that bullseye, you didn't get your desired result, because you got to get it in those wires, because hitting the wire means your dart is falling off. You did not get it in the right area. It's very clearly defined, and it's either in or it's not in. There's no gray area. But goals, it's like playing horseshoes. Being close is good enough sometimes. Mm-hmm. Hand grenades, get it in the general area, it works, okay? So that's the thing, though, is that in business, goals are okay, but results are what you need. And that whole area is critical. So when you learn that, you don't work for goals, you look at saying desired results. What's the result you want? And define it. Put it down on a piece of paper and say, I want this by this time. And you go, okay, let's test that hypothesis. Let's see if that's actually doable. So let's go back and set that intention. And that intention is virtually identical to the desired result. I want to get this, I've given myself a month to get this result. Great, cool, okay. So next thing is, what are the behaviors I need to do to get that desired result? And that's where people sort of go, oh my God, I can't just wish it and use different abilities to attract it or
right.
to just will it to me. No, it doesn't quite work that way. You've got to be able to go out there and figure out the exact behaviors that you need to be able to do. Now, do you need to get all of the exact behaviors? No. So the first one might be, okay, I need to sit down and define an action plan. Great. So what's my action plan? It's these 5 steps. I don't know what else to do, so let's take that first step and go out there and do that first step. If I do that first step, I then evaluate that step and ask myself, is it on that line between desired result or your intention and your desired result? And we literally draw a line. Intention, result. Behaviors are the things we do to get the result. But then we evaluate, because sometimes we do a behavior here, and we do our next behavior here, and we do our third behavior here. And we evaluate, and we can't really make the distinction yet, because we know we're sort of moving towards it, but are we on that line, the shortest route? But by the time we do the third thing, if I keep doing these things this way, am I going to hit my desired result? The answer is no, I'm not. So we do a course correction and go, oh, I need to behave a little bit more this way. And sure enough, it works. That was one of the things that I taught Diane, the model, and she went to town on that one. I mean, desired result is I want to move up and become an area manager, I think was inside the city. And she said, I want to be able to do that. She didn't put a time frame on it, which I'm glad I didn't force her into doing that, because it went way faster than I thought. That's another bit of the mind model. You don't over-restrict people when you're helping people through the process. They have to see it. And when they see it, they know to act on it. And so she saw the opportunity and she took it. And she kept on taking opportunities, which got her to that area or regional manager remarkably quickly. And everybody saw her talent and her ability to organize and everything else that was there. And she had the ability to evaluate herself along the way and reach her desired result and actually exceed it. So she wanted to reach area manager. She did, but she got to regional manager in about, well, way faster than she ever thought was possible. Circumstances, luck played a role, but her ability was there with her ability to work with people, to know the product, and to document and make sure that things fell in line and do the training that was required. She was an excellent little trainer. So it was awesome. So I hope that that's a clear enough explanation of an IBER, I-B-E-R, IBER.
Intention, behavior,
Result.
One of the critical pieces, and you might use a different word, I sort of conceive of your process as being very Socratic in that we're asking questions, and these questions are what enable people to be resourceful instead of in a stuck state.
Correct.
And I think that's a really powerful distinction that everyone, because with any mind model, that's what we're looking to, of course, always achieve, is to be in that resourceful frame of mind.
That, if I could just take a moment to talk about that, because resourcefulness is very different than solution focused. Solutions happen, like, if you have a solution, how many things do you have? If you have a solution, how many things do you have?
I presume a singular thing.
Exactly. I mean, just take a look at the word solution. It's derivative of soul. Sun, one. Okay? Solution, one thing. That's all I need is one thing. It's cool, it's powerful. And it used to be, back in the pre-industrial revolution and in the industrial revolution, how many ways was there to fix a mechanical machine? There's generally only one effective way to make that machine work. It's like an engine. If you take out all the parts and you have 15 parts left over, the thing isn't going to work. Okay, every part has to go back, and there's only one way to make it work properly. Now, there are other ways to make it work and improve it, but there's only one way to make it start the first time. Now, and that's slightly not true, but for our intents and purposes, there's only one solid way. The bottom line here is solutions in today's world last almost no time at all. In fact, when you take a look at a study done, on just job descriptions, when you write down a job description, back in the early 2000s, a job description would last for only 3 weeks. And in 2016, job descriptions are functionally obsolete because the day that person is hired, the job description is usually changed to some degree. It's almost not static. So that doing a job description helps you identify what you need, and you do that. And that's how come we go after role descriptions. Like, what's the role? It's broader. It includes a job description, but it includes accountabilities and responsibilities and the authority. So the responsibilities are usually that job description thing, whereas it doesn't have accountability in it. It doesn't have the authority that that person needs. But because things move so quickly, you have to start thinking about that differently. So that's a leverage point that transform, moving forward. I don't know if that completely answers the question, but it's like this whole thing of change happens so quickly. We have to move towards a resourceful state, not one that's solution focused. And unfortunately, a lot of people are still going after solutions. They're not going after, and by the way, a solution is what to do. Okay? And resourcefulness is knowing how to approach the problem, how to think about it, so you can come up with multiple solutions on the fly. And that gets people resourceful, as opposed to stuck in a solution. And resourceful states wins every time. It may not be as fast, it may not be as easy, but once you learn the habit of being resourceful, I mean, how many people out there feel stuck? Lots. And all of a sudden, they feel like they're lacking information. Well, if they don't know how to figure stuff out and be resourceful, they're lacking information, they're stuck, they're frustrated, and they're usually overwhelmed. But mind models deal with that because they work towards resourceful states.
Yeah. Well, and this is a really important thing for the members of our community to have a bit more context on, because, I mean, really coming from, your training and Melissa, this is this is what's informed the way that we approach our coaching and mentorship, and that's shifting people from. I mean, people could obviously relate to being in a stuck state, and moving them in the process of moving them to a resourceful state is something that a lot of the folks watching will likely experience. And so I think
that's virtually guaranteed, because when you're out there and you're frustrated, stuck, overwhelmed, and lacking information, you got to get that information. That's the what. And your audience needs what's, but they also need to know how to think. And that's where training the coaches, training the mentors, and engaging with causing the whole culture of this to become a resource-focused culture rather than a solution-focused culture. It actually changes your odds of success, because success comes more predictably when you're resourceful. Because if the world changes, you can adapt. And we know that the world is changing incredibly quickly. And that's something that has to happen on a far more predictable basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I very much appreciate it. I'm definitely going to be sharing this with all of my coaching clients, so that they can sort of better understand where this is coming from.
Cool.
And how these mind models work. And
Yeah.
if I can ask you one final question,
Fire
which is,
away.
of course, next year is the 10th anniversary of No Excuses. We're really much looking forward to it, and I wonder if you have anything that you would like to share with the audience about the experience they can expect to have here at No Excuses.
First of all, it is an amazing group of people. I mean, they stress that you're joining a family, and when you come here, whether you come once or you come back year after year, that's your choice, but the environment is one of being invited home. And people don't get that. They think it's, they're trying to do that thing and pitch it. Well, come here and experience that and find out how people actually are willing to engage with you and to give you that home, that place to belong and become part of a family. And in that family, people are taken care of and people are supported so that they can help transform their life and their business to learn skills. And with every family, you'll hear on stage, we're here to help you. And yes, they help you by teaching you how to move forward with the help of EMP to start off with, and you do that. But then they want you to go off on your own with their help to do and deliberately build your own business model completely different or aligned with theirs. They don't care. So I don't see that in business. Usually everybody's trying to be greedy and just make it all about themselves and get themselves to be able to make the most amount of money possible. Here, it's about actually engaging in a way that is focused on you becoming the best version of you possible with skills to leverage you and to make you and your business grow. It's not just you, but you and your business, and how to do it all. And that's different. That's how come I'm part of this. And actually this year, 9 years in, and quite a few years of knowing these people, I actually signed up to become a member of this organization, this family, to literally learn the skills, because I've got great skills and I have a business to do that, but I want to take my business online. And I literally have multiple online businesses that I could go to and ask for help, but none of them have everything that's available here. None of them have this level of package. Is it perfect? No. Is it probably the best that you can get out there? It's the best I've seen. I can tell you that. And it is delivered not just necessarily with the best information, but it's with people that care about your results. Not just giving you goals, but real results. And that's how come I'm part of this family now, not just consulting to it, but actually joined it.
Sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.